Hello, I'm Steph from the Canadian Schoolhouse, and today I'm so happy to be here with Barbori, sharing the screen with me. Barbori does actually do some work for us at the Canadian Schoolhouse, but more importantly, she's joining us today because she is a homeschool graduate. She has been homeschooled, and she is going to tell us a little bit about her a little bit about her homeschooling life, of course, and I'm quite envious because I always wished I was homeschooled. And I wouldn't be the person I was today and have such a strong conviction for homeschooling maybe if I didn't, but I love that idea that, oh, if I was homeschooled, maybe things would have been different on how I perceived, especially my post-secondary education, which I didn't do a whole lot of formal education, but Barbori certainly did. So first, I'm going to welcome you, Barbori. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
So tell us a little bit. Let's get right off and just tell us about your homeschooling life. Like, were you always homeschooled, and what was that experience for you? And you're in Alberta right now. Were you always in Alberta? And so just let us know where you were at and all that stuff with your homeschooling life.
Sure. I did all my schooling in Alberta. So everything, from grade 1 to 12 was completed in Alberta. And I was homeschooled from grade 5 to the end of high school. And before grade 5, I did go through public school as well as private school and different school options like that. And then grade 5 started homeschooling and started with blended, and then did that up until grade 8, and then for grade 9 through the end of high school, traditional homeschooling is what we went with.
So that's actually kind of backwards. So, because commonly I hear homeschooling families, they did their elementary years at home, feeling that that's especially the most formative and gives our kids a great foundation at home, and then much more choosing to go to high school. So I'm curious why. I'm sure you probably know why is it your parents decided to homeschool you, and I mean doing that blended and then full on homeschooling. What was the deciding factors for them?
It was I was a first generation homeschooler, so it was something that was new for my family. And one of the reasons that we did, as you mentioned, sort of the opposite, where we started with school and then went to traditional, is because we found that it gave us more flexibility to do traditional, and that really worked better for our family and for the schedule as well, to be able to work at my own pace and to do subjects that were interest of me. So that all worked really good. Were there some challenges or learning curves along the way? Yes, there were, but we kind of made it work, and it's all good.
That's family life though, right? Challenges one way or another, no matter where your education is. So yes, thinking about, and I know I have a couple questions here that I really wanted you to answer, but I just had something come up from what you just said again, and I'm wondering about the oh yes, because that's what it was, because I know you're an only child, right? You don't have any siblings.
That's right.
So you didn't grow up with siblings. And I find that always, I've heard that from a few people that, oh, I don't want to homeschool my only child. Like I don't have any other children. And I feel like that would be too isolating for them. How, tell us your perspective on that. I feel like you were probably feeling very isolated, or maybe you were, and you did something, your family did something to change that up.
Yeah, we did a few things to help with that. And I did participate in different activities in sports, whether that was music or sports, some homeschool field trips to meet others. And then we also, I got pets, so that was another way to kind of socialize, if you will. And that was fun. And also, as I got into the higher grades, I started meeting more people too, and just sort of expanding my social network, and that really helped too.
So as you went through high school and doing that more in that parent-led education, you deciding what to do post your, that high school education to do post-secondary was probably a little bit different than even what we're used to with public school. So tell us how you decided what you wanted to do, how your parents guided you with that, and what they did for you, but especially even as your own realization of what you wanted to do for education post-secondary.
For sure, yeah. It was mainly my mom who guided me through high school and deciding what to do afterwards, and also, I guess, sort of the feedback for post-secondary too. And what helped to get into post-secondary, at least for the first year, is that I went to a fine arts program. And so in addition to my high school grades, I also had to prepare a portfolio showcasing my artwork, and that really helped as well to show the admissions committee, I guess, or sorry, the fine arts department, my skills. And actually, when I was going through the application process at university, then the admission counselor hadn't encountered a homeschooler before who didn't have a high school diploma, and so that was new for the admissions counselor. But she was really helpful, and she answered all our questions and helped us with getting us the information, and then making sure that the process was smooth. And yeah, so as they say, in addition to the high school marks, having the portfolio of my artwork helped to show my work and ability, and that was really helpful.
So I know you're a little bit younger than me, but how long ago would it have been then that you were done high school, so that you really graduated high school? How many years ago was that?
That was in 08. 2008.
Okay. So over a decade ago. So that's interesting, just how you mentioned that, and even a decade ago. And I think that has really changed. At least that's what I'm perceiving when I hear from other people. My boys are 10 and 13. I haven't quite got that stage of really looking at what they might want to do as a career and life after homeschooling. But that's interesting that even just a little over 10 years ago, it was a little bit unheard of, or not familiar with that person. What school was it you ended up going to?
For my first year of university, I went to the University of British Columbia, their Okanagan campus in Kelowna. And it was more that because quite a few homeschoolers, at least at that time, would go to high school and get their diploma, then the university might not necessarily know that they were homeschooled for 10 or 11 years because they got their high school diploma. And so that was, there, I think there were, or probably were homeschooled, but with applying with a diploma, then that was the same application as others who would be applying from regular high school.
So I know you did share a little bit about that preparation to get into high school. So, or not high school, I mean, but university, to get into the program you were looking for. But just share a little bit about, so preparation academically, but then also just now, did you live there? When you went to university, did you live there as well? Did you move to the campus?
Yeah, not on campus.
So it was a whole.
Yeah, I lived off campus.
Moved away from home anyway.
Yeah,
because that's a big transition. Again, no matter where your education is from, that's like one of the big things that every teenager person needs to prepare for. So, so is there anything else you can share about how you prepared for university? A little bit more if you're preparing to apply, but especially once you got accepted and you knew where you were going there, or got accepted, was there something else you had to do as far as courses?
That was really exciting to get accepted to university. That was awesome. And I found the transition into university classes went really good, and I enjoyed getting to know the other students. So that was an enjoyable part of university. I guess the social side or social life, if you will. It was the smaller groups that also made it easier for me to get to know the students who were there for that year. And I was there for the first year, and then I thought I wanted to go in a different direction after the first year, and so I did that, but then thought I wanted to go back to fine arts, and then at that point we found after lots of research, my mom found a university that did the courses and the degree, I guess the courses which led to a fine arts degree online. And so for the next 2 years, I did my fine arts courses online. And then for the last semester, I actually went to the campus. And so I attended, or I wasn't, for graduation, I was there in person.
And was that the only program you did? You just did that fine arts at the University of BC? Or did you do any other post-secondary
yeah, so I did that for my first year through UBCO, and then I actually ended up graduating from the Academy of Art University, and they're in the U.S., in California. And so with them, I did 2 years online, and then the last semester on campus. And then to this day, they still offer their degrees online, so one can complete the courses and degrees online from home, which provides a nice flexibility. And yeah, and then after I graduated there, as an undergraduate, I did go on right into a graduate program in fine arts as well. But I just, after doing that 1 year, I decided that I wanted to do something else. So I took almost another year off and sort of thought more about what I wanted to do. And then in 2014, in November, I started, again, online a graduate communications program, this time through Southern New Hampshire University. And then I finished that by February 2016, and then graduated in 2016 in a graduate degree.
Cool. So did you find any of that transition into that institutional type of education? Was that transition difficult, or did you find you were as equipped or maybe even more equipped, or as other students that were in either of those programs, but doing, I guess after when you went for the communications, you kind of already had a bit of adult experience there, so it might not have been the same, but especially that transition from, a home parent-led education to an institutional education. I think it's something that it's nice to hear how that transition went for other people that may be in that stage right now, whether you're a teenager or a parent out there. It's good to know how that transition and not just it's a transition no matter if you went from public school or private school. I mean, that's a big change. It's an exciting change, right? You're really going on to that adult part of life. But tell us, is there anything you can share about that transition, and especially anything that you found that made it easier to go from a really more intimate education to that other type of education that has to happen when you educate big groups of people?
For sure. I think that the transition went well from homeschooling to high school. I guess in the first year, 3 of my classes were studio-based, which is more like for arts project, and then the other 2, one was English and the other one was art history. And definitely, I guess, when I entered university, compared to even graduate school, my English has, my writing skills, writing essays has improved. And so that is nice, so that has improved. It was like looking back on it, I got good grades in English and art history in undergrad, but just the level of complexity of the essays between undergraduate and graduate, there is a difference. And so one of, I guess, some advice or suggestions that I would give is it's just important to be ready for writing papers in university, whether that is for English or if it's even reports, even like for lab reports, science classes. I just to have a good grasp and understanding of writing and grammar and just basic like that, spelling. And so some of those areas I already was strong in, others I just kind of had to spend more time, and some of that just meant even spending more time reading, which I find that actually after I graduated, graduated high school, that I had more time to read, if that makes sense. And also just with experiencing life post high school, I guess, in the adult world, if one wants to say that, one gets experience, not just with post-secondary, but even with working and just life in general. And some of the books that one reads a little bit later, it's like, oh, now I relate to that because I have that experience of going to university or of working, and now I know what that character going through. So so reading definitely also helps improve both English skills, and then that's applied to writing essays, and that shows up in our students' structured essays, and so that all works together.
Yeah, I'm really listening. Listening well, even though I just have a 10 and 13-year-old now. I find I really want to prepare them, and it's kind of something I can do as a parent because I'm overseeing everything they do for learning, right? So it's to get them have a real good grasp of communication is actually what I feel is like the best, no matter what they want to do. Now, certainly, if they really wanted to go into, university or college, I feel would be a very similar way that communication, especially written communication, is important. So I know even as my 13-year-old, and my older one is a little bit more resistant maybe to that than my younger one. But I like the point you made actually about reading, like so much, just being able to read all different kinds of things, right? So not just one type of reading. And I feel like that's what you probably you probably did lots of reading still when you were doing high school, but you got the opportunity to then to do really different kinds of reading that really applied probably to your what you had to complete as far as project work and essays and all that.
That's right. I did read the textbooks in high school. So but then after high school, I guess I read more, even more so books that were of interest to me. I've read a mix of fiction and nonfiction, and that fiction, quite a few classics as well. And, I know that they recommend reading the classics in high school as well, and some of the classics I think are great for high school. Some of them would I have kind of understood as much about them if I had read them in high school compared to afterwards or a few years later. That's sort of up in the air. But I can see that, I'm like, oh, that makes sense now. So it was really good. Just be introduced to those stories and learn from them as much as possible.
So any other advice that you can give parents or even the students as they're transitioning? Anything you look back on now to think, oh, I could have been a little bit more prepared if I did this, or maybe offered this course, or even the process that you went through to choose what you wanted to do post-secondary. Is there any advice that you could give that could work for some families? I mean, we're all, it's not a one size fits all for anybody, but certainly there would be people, that could really fit that same kind of situation that you had that would benefit from any advice.
Yeah, I've got two pieces of advice and that I'd like to share. The first one is that it's important to start identifying what the students' interests are, and also give them opportunity to discover what those interests are. So if they can try different activities and just learn about different events and subjects, then that really gives them the chance to not only learn but also learn what they like, and that will help when it comes time to deciding what they might like to do after high school. And my second piece of advice is, I think, sorry, going back to the first one there, is also, in addition to having students try new things, also I encourage parents to keep communicating and talking with each child about their interests as well, and ask them, what do you like to do? And do you like having more structure in your schedule? How do you kind of envision, your ideal workday? What kind of tasks do you like to do already now that you would like to continue after high school? And sort of see how that relates either into a job or into necessary training for a career. And so that's sort of maybe, the first piece of advice. And then the second is that if a student isn't sure what they want to do after high school, as in what program they want to do at post-secondary, then it's definitely okay as well to work for a year or two, and maybe they might then go to post-secondary maybe later on, maybe when they're 22 or 23, and that's okay. Maybe they will then have worked for 3 or 4 years, but they can do other things during that time. Maybe they will have saved up enough. Maybe they might like to buy property of their own and turn it into an income property. And then they have that, and then they say, oh, now I like to do this, and maybe then going to university will be more, I don't want to say for fun, but more like something that's more for their personal, or something that they will want to enjoy, and like for their confidence, and more for enjoyment, personal enjoyment.
Yeah, I feel like even as a parent, and as much as I try not to, I think we really do put off on our kids what we want them to be. And I liked your advice there about really talking with them and asking them, right? I'm totally going to take that and use that. I've done that a little bit again with even just my 13 and 10-year-old. I think it's so important for them to know who they are. And even though I may be leading their education, and I may be the one picking their courses and going through the lessons, and there's always a foundation of what they have to learn, and there's no option of. There's also so much that's open, especially when you're homeschooling, because you have, for one thing, so much more free time to really go and explore those interests, like as the students. So my boys really have much more free time. I'm looking right now, like they're outside stacking wood, like what wonderful little boys they are, and they just do that now automatically. And not that, but maybe they want to process wood and be a logger or something as they grow up. But just to have all those different opportunities open to them, right? Like I don't think as parents, especially if we choose homeschooling, we don't mean to tell them, oh, you're so good at this and you should do that. But I think it inevitably happens, because as a parent, we think so. So I think that's grand advice, like to say, after you're really done that home education part, that basic education, then take some time to experience life a little bit, just as more or less as an adult, making your own decisions. And you'll probably find things that me, as the wonderful loving parent I am, and I try to expose them to things, I just don't even pick up on that, maybe, right? So it's just a way to and I think that's actually great advice. I don't think that advice of maybe taking a year or two off after that formal education, I think that's great for anybody. I think that, most kids are done high school, even in a public or private setting at 17, and I find that still really young to really know what you want when you haven't experienced life. So or the saying, you haven't experienced a life on your own without that leading of your parents near as much. So really, really important to do that kind of thing, and not be and just be totally okay that, yeah, if you're in your 20s and just starting that post-secondary, that higher education in a university or college or even a trades or anything like that, it's totally okay to do that.
Right.
So you didn't do right. You didn't do GED. You didn't go that route of getting a GED to sort of show that OSSD equivalent.
No.
No, you didn't. That is one option that people go through. I'm so glad that, not glad that you didn't, but I'm just glad we had somebody on here to show that, because we have done one other, homeschool graduate interview, and if I remember correctly, he didn't go that route. He didn't go that route either. But it is a route that a lot of people could do, going a GED. We also have, so I'll get Christine to just pop that in the comments there. Christine is in the background organizing things for us. So she's going to put a link in there to one of the articles we have on the site that is a homeschooling mother wrote this, and her first daughter actually went through a little bit more. I think she went into, it wasn't fine arts. I think she did something with dance or something like that. Anyway, I remember in the article how it said what she needed to do to get into the school she was going to was do that portfolio and show some of her work, right? And so a very different approach to getting into school than how our other daughter, what she wanted to get into, and I can't quite remember, it does say it in the article, how she wanted to go just the GED and having that equivalency. So for an Ontario secondary school diploma, although I guess all provinces have that similar thing. What is it in Alberta? Do you know? Do they just call it an Alberta secondary school diploma?
Yeah, I just call it my diploma. I'm sure it has an official name.
It's probably an official name, right? So me in Ontario my whole life, that's I mean I know that one from public school, but it is, so that, check out that article if you want to go that GED route. That's an option. And I even have a friend and her son went through that 2 years ago. I think it was actually just at the beginning of when all the restrictions and COVID stuff came into play, because it kind of messed up with him going, because you do have to go somewhere to do that test, but you spend and you can get all the books, and this article actually really goes through a really straightforward process. She has just filled it with lots of information, lots of links to get really educated on what that GED process is. So that's another great way to go, to show that university or college that you have that equivalent knowledge as a student going in there. And I also wanted to point out too that I know there are a number of schools, university colleges across Canada and the States, and probably internationally as well, that are really they're really aware of this growing homeschooling students. And so they have specific things. Even lots of their websites have a page that's for admissions for homeschooling students, so they can go through that and see what they need. But definitely their admissions counselors are really well informed on what a homeschooling student would need, and it doesn't necessarily have to be going a GED route. There's so many different ways to do that. So I think that kind of covers everything we wanted to share. Let me just take one peek here. Oh, you know what? We did have an article that's just came out in our fall issue, and I'm going to get, and she already did that. I see those comments in there, that it's the navigating the bookend years of homeschooling. So that was just in our fall issue, but it was actually an article. So it was like what do we call it? favorite article previously published. So the article was actually from a few years back, really relevant still to today. It doesn't really change, but in this article, it talks about starting homeschooling, the preschooling years, a little bit of perspective on that, and then also talking about the high school years, and really just having that whole experience with your kids. And those are sometimes the hardest, the starting the education, and then the moving them on to, you know, preparing them for that adult life, whatever that has for them. So, well, thank you so much, Barbori. I know that just what you've shared, and really having a homeschool graduate share that, is going to be a great help to many people. So thank you for joining us. And if you have any questions, feel free to pop them into the comments here. We will definitely look at those questions afterwards. You might be just watching the recording right now, so ask away in the questions here, and you can also just message us on our Facebook page here as well, or put a question in the Facebook group if you're watching on our group page. Thanks, and I hope you have a beautiful day. Bye for now.